Alright, and welcome to patch 13.18. My name is Chris, and joined by my longtime patch review duo partner is Jason.
Hey, Chrissy, I'm back. Good to be alive. Good to be here. Good to be with you on patch 1318.
Yeah, we got a really short patch here for the most part. Nothing really jumps out at me, but then at the end we have a new champion, which is always fun to discuss about, and this one I'm actually kind of excited about. It really piqued my interest. I'm looking forward to talking about Briar. And then right before we get into it, I would like to announce the new champion that we're going to talk about in our Champion Judgment series. Put a
Well, this is
lot of
actually me as well.
I put a lot of thought in this, and I decided that since we've done like 3 melee bruiserist people, or at least people that turned into bruisers, that I would select a ranged person next. So I have chosen Kog'Maw.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh, the cog. Okay.
Feel like he's unbelievably one-dimensional and boring, and his kit or his like theme is some kind of acidic void monster. Leaves a lot of room for something interesting.
I really like playing alongside Kog'Maws. Like, actually keeping that guy upright and then seeing him spit out the damage is really fun. But I can't disagree with anything that you just said.
Yeah, I think he's super boring. So that's who's gonna be up next in 2 weeks.
Cool, cool.
So that'll be fun. I have a couple ideas, but nothing really rock solid. I only have like one really good idea right now. Nothing really good yet.
You got a head start on me? You, like, came up with ideas before you even announced the champion?
Just one thing that I think I definitely wanted. I still got to come up with a few other things though, because I'm not really happy with a
Alright.
lot of his kit.
I declare shenanigans, and you're disqualified, and you're getting a 3 out of 10 on this rework.
It'll be hard to beat my last one though, that's for sure.
Yeah,
What'd you give me, like a 6 or 7 or something?
you a 7.5. I thought it was good. I just didn't think it was Tryndamere.
Well, that was the point.
All right, let's
Okay,
get to the patch notes.
we got some. No one cares about any of that. Okay, first up we've got Bard. Let's see, got his much longer movement speed on his passive, so he's less dependent on picking up 15 charms to keep his movement speed up. So I guess that's kind of handy for roaming, because basically now he just picks up one charm and he's off to the races.
Yeah, pretty much. Do you know whether the movement speed out of combat persists after you get into and leave combat? Like, if he makes a gank and then moves on, does he get that speed back a few seconds later?
I don't know actually, because this is kind of the part of his kit that no one really uses and you don't even see
Yeah.
leveraged.
Yeah. Still pretty nice that, like, he gets all this time and he can actually stack it to a pretty high level now if he somehow hits a lot of chimes in the jungle. And then there's Caretaker Shrine.
Yep. Now this is on a stock system instead of a straight cooldown system. Why that was necessary is a question to the ages.
Yeah, I mean, they gave it the Taric treatment here. But I think maybe even more important than the stock system is that, if you can go AP Bard, you can get a lot of movement speed from the Shrine now.
Yeah, the only problem with that is while AP is the only thing he scales with, more
Uh-huh.
times than not, Bard tends to actually just build like Thresh, kind of just like an off tank, where he can't even get any AP. Because
I've
he's just
seen that.
loaded with so many utility items, you don't even really see AP on him ever.
Yeah, I've seen utility, I've seen off tank, I've seen full AP Bard. Um, my opinion, like, AP Bard was all right already, and the only reason it wasn't great was because he only has one skill that actually I think scales with AP. Or did the shrine also scale in some way with the healing?
No. I mean, the healing did, yeah, but not now it does
Uh-huh.
both.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, this is definitely useful. I think it does actually push the equation a little bit in favor of AP Bard personally. And then the stock system. I mean, I agree with you. I don't know that they needed to do it, but I do want to say that this is like a clear this excuse me. This is a clear buff. Like the fact that he can put down two health packs, in front of his ally, and they will basically get the same amount of healing as if he had put down a pack and it had gone to the maximum charge. And then the ally picked it up. Is really nice. I mean, it's, if you're just trying to help an ally escape, you're giving him twice as much healing as you used to now. Same amount of speed, obviously, because that won't stack if you get it twice in a row. But I think that just as far as the healing, this is a clear and significant buff for Bard.
This is definitely a big ARAM buff, because now it goes to his full strength after 5 seconds instead of 10.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I mean, most of the time you're just putting it over the health back anyway.
Yeah,
and it reaches full strength. And the only way it doesn't reach full strength is if your teammate is an idiot and just walks over it immediately.
Unfortunately, outside the laning phase, that portion of the ability is basically inconsequential.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, unless you're really good at setting it up, and predicting where a fight is going to take place later.
Alright, next up, we're going to skip Briar to the end like usual, and we're going to hop right to... I don't even want to talk about Caitlyn. Let's go to Gwen.
Yeah, Caitlyn is actually... this is not a change. Yeah, this is not a change. They didn't change anything here.
Alright.
I don't know why they bothered doing anything behind the scenes. Caitlyn did not even appear on the official patch notes. I was just curious to see whether she would appear. I didn't look at the patch notes. But no, she's not there. I don't even know how the guys on the wiki figured out that they made this change behind the scenes. Somebody's diving deep. Good for them.
Alright. Gwen gets... Gwen
gets buffed.
More health at 18, or more health per level, whatever.
Yep.
And then more jungle help too with her Q. We got more damage. Yeah, I don't even think I've actually seen someone jungle this champ before.
I've definitely seen it. I have seen it work out. Usually it doesn't. So the fact that they're trying to make it more of a thing, I don't know. I'm okay with that. Like, Gwen is an interesting jungler.
She just doesn't really have any good tools for jungling, and she heals way more off champions than she does minions and monsters.
She has enough gap close to be like an adequate jungler as long as she can clear the waves okay. She has enough scaling and enough gap close that she can essentially do the jungle role. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that you really want in a jungler besides maybe CC that Gwen doesn't offer.
I feel if she didn't have her ultimate up, she really doesn't have much gank potential.
I agree with that.
Without like the triple slow on her ultimate, I don't feel like she brings much to the table.
I mean, her dashes are decent.
She's got one dash.
She uses it twice though, right?
No.
No, just once?
If she auto attacks someone like pretty quickly after dashing, the cooldown gets partially refunded.
I see. So it just looks like she's using it twice. Yeah, I mean, and I do agree that probably the bigger story here is the extra 100 health at 18, or 170 health at 18.
Cool.
And what kind of spot do you think Gwen's in just in general right now? Average?
She's always been really strong and really snowbally, even with like all the nerfs of her true damage and stuff. As long as they don't change the health scaling on her passive that factors into her Q and ultimate damage, she'll probably continue to be a late game monster, even with the nerfs to her W. It's just all the max health damage that she piles on so fast that makes her so potent. So,
agreed. Yeah, I'd probably spot her at being a little bit weaker than you think she is, but I agree about everything you said. Like that, she does become that late game monster. She can threaten early, and this extra health growth will mean that she won't pop as early if she has to get into like a 1v2, 1v3 type of, or 3v4 type of team fight later on.
Yeah, and It's definitely just a nice little security blanket in the laning phase. Any buff to those stats is always, you're always going to feel it more in the laning phase, I think.
You play her at all? I don't think I've ever seen you pull out Gwen.
Yeah, I've actually played her a lot,
Oh, nice, nice.
but it was after a lot of nerfs that she got. I don't think I ever played her when her Q did like 100% true damage in the middle. So,
Oh, I mean, there's some nice buffs. Next time we play it together, I want to see you pull it out.
but I did play it post or pre ultimate rework where she had to hit someone again to cast the ultimate, whereas now she can just send all 3 of the ultimates out without hitting anyone, which is way stupider, way stronger.
Yeah, it's a lot less feast or famine.
Yeah.
Now it's just feast.
Oh yeah, her ultimate. Even when you're behind, if you like hit a lot of people with her ultimate, is just dummy strong. It is so strong. She just scales so marvelously with like AP. It's insane.
I'd still rather have like a Nasus late game.
Yeah, but I don't know. She's one of the best like 1v1ers in the game.
Yeah, not denying that. She's
Okay.
Jackson and Dalsit.
Next up, we got Aurelia. Just a slight buff on her ultimate, which I always felt this kind of an underwhelming ultimate, to be honest. If she's ahead, it's kind of oppressive, but if she's like even to behind, it's kind of garbage. Doesn't do hardly any damage. It's basically just an extension of her Q for the most part. In the olden days, this ultimate was actually something of a game changer, but now it's basically just a glorified engage tool that doesn't really do any damage. So I guess this is good. This is going to be pretty good when she's ahead, though.
Yes, but most of the time when she's ahead, like, I think most of the time she's gonna have her ultimate up if she wants to fight anyway, and even if she doesn't, she can often just hit the stun, dash in, and, take out, anybody but a tank without her ultimate. So, to me, this isn't a big deal. I think Aurelia was already fairly good, and will continue to be fairly good.
Yeah.
Yep. I got nothing else to say about that. I think this change is a nothing burger.
Yeah. Next up is something I don't think is a nothing burger. We got
Agreed.
a big nerf to Jarvan's passive, and this has basically been unchanged for like 10 or 12 years or something. It's always been like 8 or, what was it?
8% current health.
Yeah. It's kind of a shame because this really helps him last hit. It's good in the jungle, and it's a big part of like his like combo too. I don't know why they would change something like this. It's kind of just a nice little oomph that he has.
He's strong, and I've seen a lot of him lately. But this is a weird place to nerf him. I agree. And this is just like this is just taking a quarter of the power off of this skill straight up at every level. Like that's severe. This isn't even like some like 1-point wonder skill that you don't care about. Like this is significant damage, in an extended fight. Most of the time I see Jarvan's just go lethality now anyway, so it doesn't even matter, but for the people that were playing him correctly, quote unquote, and building him as kind of like a tanky bruiser or fighter, this is kind of sad.
Very sad. If they were going to do something like this, they should have just made it like scale and be like 6 to 10.
But they updated his ability icon, so basically it's power neutral.
Oh, okay. They nerfed his ultimate too. Look at this.
Yeah, no longer able to stop unstoppable units. Well, that's because they're unstoppable, Chrissy.
Sounds like a nerf to me.
I mean, it kind of is.
Okay.
Bug fixes can absolutely be nerfs or buffs.
Some of them aren't even bugs. They just lie. Because they don't want to admit it was their design intention for it to work that way. Next up, we got Kayn. Pretty big change here. Another nail in the coffin of Rost, as usual. We've got just flat amount of healing that Rost gets now instead of its scaling. And I guess this is a slight buff to his early game, but I think he'd be
Mhm.
way more what do you call it? Way more concerned with his late game performance, especially considering he doesn't even get access to Rost until like, 10, 15 minutes into the game. So the fact that
Uh-huh.
this is higher than the initial percentage is actually just a moot point, essentially.
Oh, this doesn't do anything on his unevolved form.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that is pretty bad.
So
So
Darkin, yeah.
Kane is and always has been a very strong champion. They've always kept in a very strong place. But yeah, this is severe. And that first part, yeah, I agree with you. Upon hearing your argument, I agree with you completely that that is a nerf. But this change to Dark and Umbral Trespass, this is enormous. Kane's a champion that can actually have 200 plus bonus AD, and what this is that they're nerfing is it's the ratio of the target's maximum health. So if you're looking at it, it says 10% per bonus AD, right? That's a typo. It should say 10% per 100 bonus AD from 13. So if you've got, let's say, 250 as a kind of a high mark, bonus AD as Rust Kane, uh, this is a change of 7.5% of the target's maximum health coming off of your ultimate. If they've got 3,000 maximum HP, and that's not even real high for a tank, that is a nerf of 200, over 200 damage. I think 225 damage. That's enormous. Um, Look, I still like having Rost Kane on my team. I'm sure I will still like having Rost Kane on my team after these changes. But man, this is a big nerf. Like if you were kind of marginal on playing Kane before, stop playing Kane now. Or just always build him Shadow Assassin if the enemy team has a bunch of squishies. This is pretty sad.
Well, what you did mention is the fact that, yes, the damage portion of that ultimate took a big hit, but the
Uh-huh.
healing portion of that ultimate is directly tied to the amount of damage it does based on the target's max health. So
Yes,
if they
absolutely
change the
true.
damage portion, it's also a huge nerf to the healing component.
Yes. Yes, huge nerf to the healing, in addition to the fact that the Darken healing on the passive is also being nerfed there, right? So it's like a double whammy on the heal.
Exactly.
Because they're both tied to the damage that he deals, and you're getting less percentage now. It's actually a triple whammy. This is awful. Expect some darkened buffs sometime before the end of the season.
It's hard to believe Rost used to heal for like 44 to like 48% at one point.
Or yeah, rust is probably the better way to say it than darken. But yeah, I remember when that was like a mega tank healing, but they did buff the rust damage over time, right?
Uh, Maybe, but it was not even
I think
ever.
so.
It was never bad though.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, this guy has been crazy for a long time. He's still been really good. I guess he'll still probably be fairly good even after these huge nerfs.
I never even thought Ross was broken. I thought Ross was pretty balanced. I thought the Shadow Assassin was the one that was very uninteractable and kind of goofy burst.
Yeah, but he's so easy to blow up as Shadow Assassin. I still would rather have the Rust on my
Yeah, but
team.
he also has to do so little to blow you up
That
that
is
it's
true.
pretty goofy.
That is true. I'm not going to deny that. I do wonder whether maybe the slightly quicker game times recently. Uh, mm, no, because then you would think that Kane would be buffed because he wants long game times, and if it's quicker games, yeah, this is bizarre. Probably just because he's very strong and maybe had a patch where he spikes to being even stronger than usual.
In like 3 years from now, they're going to be making balance changes to adjust for the fact that every game is 15 minutes long.
Well, we think that it's very important to have an impactful landing phase, and we don't mind the game actually snowballing if you've earned it.
I've been saying for
Um,
years that they've been pushing the regular game towards ARAM.
I don't know about that. If anything, long game lengths push your regular game towards ARAM because, by the time you get above 33 minutes, unless you have idiots on your team, it's all team fighting. So there.
All right, next up we got Kennen, and just some straight buffs for this dude. Some less energy cost on his, not actually a dash, it's just bonus movement speed, and then less cooldown on his mega super dope ultimate, so that has more uptime too. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, the uptime on his ultimate is really important because Kennen is one of those like older designed champs. I don't remember exactly when he came out. Was it season 2?
No, it was before season 1 started.
It was preseason, or it was beta. I mean, interesting. Okay,
It wasn't the
so
beta. There was a grace period before the first season of Ranked, and when
I
the
see.
game launched in 2009.
So it was season 1-ish. He is one of those champs that I think you would not see today because he has a very split identity between he's like this poke and peck lane bully in terms of his QW and E essentially. Less so is E. And then he is this massive wombo combo team fighter just in his ult and really only in his ult. And it's really hard to actually reconcile those two identities.
I think
Because
for how old he is, I think he's pretty cool.
Oh, he's a cool champ, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm happy he's in the game. But he is the type of champ you wouldn't see today, and I'm also happy that you wouldn't see that type of champ today. Because you'd see them designed in a more coherent way.
I said several months ago that I thought he would get a rework within the next 2 years.
Yeah, I think we've all been expecting that for a while, right? And maybe at some point he will. But it is weird as Kennen, trying to isolate 1v1 matchups where, as long as you're not unfed, you can be effective in those 1v1 splits all game, versus actually trying to join the team fights where you're going to have a big impact with your ult. It's awkward.
He's not good in this side lane after, the laning phase.
Oh, I disagree with that. He can be a very good split pusher if he's even or ahead against anything but an Uber tank.
No, I don't think he's very good against the bruisers or any of whatever off tank you want to call it.
Does he performs
for very long?
You play him well, and the bruisers are never going to get to him. He'll just dink and dunk him down.
Well, just the ability to run away alone doesn't really make you great at split pushing. It's very annoying and helpful, but you have to, at some point you actually have to take a fight,
If you poke them down far enough, they'll never be able to take the fight on you.
True.
That's essentially the the value there. But I have a theory that I'd like to run past you, and that's that if they lowered Kennen's ultimate even further, let's say they made it 80, 70, 60. I think he would all of a sudden be a really good mid laner.
No.
Because I think that the only thing he's really missing from being a pretty good mid laner is being able to get to and use use his ultimate in every team fight or large skirmish that breaks out in the early to mid game.
That's why why you think he can't go mid.
That's why I think he's not good enough mid. Yeah.
There's a much better reason he doesn't go mid.
Which is?
His wave clear sucks ass.
I mean, that's fair, but Static Shiv is in the game, and it has an AP ratio.
Static Shiv is not a answer to an AP champion's bad wave clear, man.
That's exactly what it is. Look at LeBlanc.
She already had her W.
W wasn't good wave clear. She could never wave clear before Static Shiv. All she could do is, hope to only miss one wave and roam somewhere else and get a kill.
If you're rushing Static Shiv, then you're just gutting your character because it doesn't give you the stats an AP champion needs, even if it does give you decent wave clear.
It kind of doesn't, but like the wave clear is big. Well, again, I'm saying he would also need to put out value in those skirmishes early, like with a 120-second level 6 ultimate. I agree with you. Even with Static Shiv, he cannot play mid. But my theory is that if they reduced that at the early ranks, I think he'd be a good mid laner.
He's got to like play too goofily to do his wave clear, and it'd be just too hard
Man,
for him to
everything
play.
about League mid laners is goofy these days.
Well, not a lot of wave clear. Not of other mid laners have to go run through the minion wave to do their wave clear.
Right now he doesn't have to either with Static Shiv.
That's like not an argument. I don't think.
You don't think it is?
It's not an argument to build
is.
something that doesn't synergize with your champ because it gives wave clear.
You tell me how Static Shiv synergizes with LeBlanc or a Kali, or a Kali maybe a little bit more, but LeBlanc or Echo.
It makes
or all these champs that are actually using it mid and being effective.
It makes no sense to get it on Echo. He already has like the best wave clear in the game almost. Or just
not early on. Not early on.
And LeBlanc is just way too Magic Pen dependent to like be rushing something that ineffective. She needs like Ludens.
And you would think so, until you look up LeBlanc, Static Shiv win rates and actually see like 14 of them in your games. I've seen it, man. I've seen things. They've scarred me.
Okay, let's see. Next up, we've got all the way down to Rell. And we've got some nerfs for this clearly overpowered champion. It's about time.
Wait, was that a joke? That was a joke, right?
It was a joke.
Okay, good. You're so good at deadpanning. Yeah, so the thing about Rell is that she actually is very overpowered in high-level coordinated play, talking like the pros, and particularly with getting close to Worlds, they probably needed to do this. Obviously, engaged tanks are very, very popular and useful in the pros, and then in addition to that, just the fact that, Rell can act if your team is very coordinated, right? As a Leona that can hit multiple people with a stun, just makes her extremely valuable there. Anything besides high-level coordinated play, Rell tends to suck. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and I already didn't want a Rell on my team. I don't want to play Rell because the team can't take advantage of what she does, and it's actually harder than you might think to do what she does. And
She's good. Her problem's always been is there's other champions that do what she does way faster. Her kit is just not fast enough. Like Alistar, Leona, Nautilus, whatever you want to do it, there's just champions that do what she does but way faster and much harder to react to. Rell's combo is just too slow. And
it is slow.
And also, this is her W. Most people probably don't even know what her kit does. This is the first part of her W where she remounts and gains movement speed.
Should have brought in Tyler for the explainer here, but yeah, like okay, Alistar and Nautilus do what she does quicker, but she can do it more times in an extended fight than they can. But yeah, I agree with you. Like
Leona's probably the best comparison. She's just superior.
Yeah, Leona's the best comparison, and Leona's a really good champ.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, sad to see this happen to Rell. I think they just had to do it, cost the pro scene. And Rell is a champion that needs that movement. So even though this looks like a fairly small nerf, I think it will mean something.
Alright, next up we've got Senna, and we got an interesting change here where her basic attack critical strike baseline is being increased to 100% like most of the champions in the game, from being reduced to 91.5% for her whole lifetime. And this probably always should have been the case, because this kind of thing only happens to champions who have some kind of bizarre caveat to their auto attacks like Graves and Jhin. And Senna is more in line with like a dedicated auto attacker, because she actually gains most of the benefit from attack speed, unlike Graves and Jin. So this is probably something she always should have had. Obviously, it's a big buff.
Yeah, that's good analysis. And as much as I don't like seeing buffs to Senna in general, I think that just the simplification of not needing to like come up with a random percentage to multiply your critical strike damage by, and just to have it work normally is really nice. So I applaud the simplification here if they're going to buff something.
And then, as a little quality of life change, anyone who has her passive on them, she just immediately collects them by detonating her CC ability on them, which is probably something she should have started with this whole time. So, this will give everyone mist, and it'll also collect mist from everybody.
Just by hitting them once?
No, if they already have it, it'll collect it on everyone. And if they don't have it, it'll apply it to everyone.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So, obviously, this is going to help her get a few more stacks here and there that she never would have otherwise been able to accumulate. So, definitely some nice stuff for Senna. I think she's one of the best design champions that they put out the last few years, honestly.
I'm not a fan of the design there, personally.
I know, you hate Senna, you love Pike. Let's move on. Next up, we've got Thresh, and I believe this is a third revert of when this was up to 2, dropped to 1.5, up to 2, and then I think dropped again, and now we're back to 2 again. Apparently, it's not overpowered at the moment, because this has gone back and forth a number of times.
Yeah, so this is not a champ that I play, even though he's really cool. Where is most of the shield usually coming from? The base value or the souls?
Early on, I guess it's the base value.
Well, let's say, for most of the game, does it become, does it get to the point where it's actually shielding more on souls usually than on the base value?
Yeah, doesn't scale very well though either way, to be honest.
Okay.
And his W has been nerfed a bunch of times over the years, so...
This is reasonably big then. Yeah, I mean, the W, even if it's shielded to 0, right, would be a lot of utility. They're actually just a very cool champ. I love this skill. And, yeah, this is fine. I don't think that Thresh has been particularly strong at all lately.
There was a time where he would throw out the W and it would just shield everyone in the area, like Locket.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was crazy.
That'd be cool.
There's no way that needs to be brought back.
Now it's only him or him and an ally if they're next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, next up we got Tryndamere, the crappy version.
Oh.
What'd you say?
I just laughed at your, the crappy version.
Less damage, less health, yay.
Yeah, I mean, like, you called it. I called it a little bit, but you really called it a couple patches ago when he was changed to 175 attack range.
That was last patch.
That was last patch, and it was like, who needed this? Who in the game wanted this? Jeez.
It's probably one of the most unhealthy things they could have done to Tryndamere.
I mean, how did they not see that was going to overpower him?
I don't even think these changes really compensate for how much of an aggravating buff that would be for him in the laning phase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Yeah, like health growth reduced. He doesn't need health. He just gets 5 seconds of complete immunity.
I haven't played against him since he got that range buff, but I've played a million games against Tryndamere before then, and I can tell you, man, that would be so obnoxious for him to have more auto attack range.
I did see one game, or I was in one game, where the Tryndamere went 0-9-0. This was after that last buff. Maybe it was somebody just trying him out and not knowing how the hell to play Trynd.
No, that's just how Tryndamere is. Just black and white, or up and... What do you call it? Hit or miss, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I call it feast or famine, but even if he famines out, right? Like, with 5 seconds of pure immunity, once he gets to like 2 items of a crit build, he can still run people down. He's not gonna win a duel like with a fighter, but he can take on a squishy. Anyway, yeah, this isn't gonna be enough to balance him. He's still gonna be overpowered. And if you know how to like, you know, if you know how to lane well with Trin, because once you get past laning, it's pretty easy. Just keep playing him for Freela. Next.
All that matters is if he picked first, or you get to see what you're laning against, because so much of the Trendemir matchup is based upon who he's going to match him, who's going to match him the whole game. And if
So
you're
who are
someone,
your favorite Tryndamere counters?
well, it depends on. It's two types of ways you want to deal with Trendemir. You can just play like the shrug off Trendemir and just get beat on the whole game, but play something that he can never like push out of lane, or you can try to play something that actively tries to like kill him every time you find him.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to like be on the approach where I just let him beat me up the whole game, and then I inevitably am playing something that he actually can't win a fight against in the Supreme late game. Trundle's very good, and Trundle kind of plays on both of those at the same time. He can be a bully early on with all of his stat steal effects, and late game he also just becomes so tanky, and Trendemir doesn't run any tank stuff that he also just melts Trendemir, forces him to ult so early that he can't even duel Trundle. Shen and Olaf also tend to be able to shrug him off pretty easy too.
I guess he can't kill you when he can't hit you, right?
I actually find that Malphite is looked at as like the classic counter, but I actually think Malphite isn't actually good against him. He makes it like annoying for Trendemir, but Malphite's damage is so low, and Trendemir's sustain gets out of control so fast with his Q that not only are you just taking too much of a beating, you can't really CS, you're always pushed in, and even later on when you get some items, you just don't do damage fast enough for him to chop through Malphite's like hundreds of armor still.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like,
So,
Malphite is not as good of a Tryndamere counter as people would think. Back in the day when Thornmail just did percent,
yeah, that would do it.
reflection, that was pretty good.
My friend Matt is like a master of the Garen versus Trendemir matchup, though. I've watched him do the matchup like several times, and he always dumpsters Trendemir. He swears by it that Garen is the best against Trendemir.
I can believe that. Like, you can get away from the slow very easily. You can absolutely bully him early game, and yeah, like even the fact that Tryndamere can ult on you, you can kind of save your ult for when he's done, or you could even take him down from like 30% HP, and unless Tryndamere is very very good with his reflex on hitting that ult, like you can spike him from where he doesn't expect it. So yeah, I agree with Matt.
I think it could be good. I also think it's very risky, because if you ever get close to falling behind, I think Trendemir will just completely own Garen the whole game.
Sure. But Tryndamere should not get ahead of Garen.
I don't think it's a slam dunk. My friend's just super good at the matchup.
Yeah.
I think for one person who wants to shit on Trendemir, I think Trundle is the best thing you can pick against him. It just it puts so much pressure on Trendemir to play around Trundle instead of Trundle having to like play around Trendemir. Because Trundle just has so many stat stealing effects that it just makes Trendemir so incredibly difficult to commit.
And the pillar out of the ground like the second that he spins towards you.
You got to be pretty fast for that. Yeah, you feel on top of the world if you knock him out of his spin.
Yeah.
It's just the combination of the fact that Trendemir doesn't build any like defensive stats and Trundle steals so much. You just melt him so fast that he's forced to ult way too quickly. And it's just really really good matchup for Trundle.
Alright, what do we have to say about Xayah?
Well, we got less health, we got more health, and then we got a cooldown increase on her E, which is kind of her bread and butter damage ability in the lane. Actually, it's just her bread and butter damage ability overall, because
yeah, that's always the first skill.
Even her ultimate feeds into this, essentially. And this has been messed with. The cooldown on this has been screwed with many times to compensate for the changes to Essence Reaver and her access to cooldown reduction, as 80 carries tend to stack the least amount of cooldown reduction. And the uptime of this ability is kind of integral to the state that Xayah is currently in the game.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe not as big as it looks because by level 9 you've maxed this anyway. But in laning phase, yeah, she's going to be a lot less oppressive now.
Yep. Alright, that will do it for the champions. Now we've got some fairly minuscule item changes here. First up, we'll talk about Crown of the Shattered Queen. We're getting more AP, less damage reduction while the shield's up. The shield reduction lasts for a little bit longer. Unfortunately, you no longer get the cool effect of while the shield up, you get more AP than this is giving you the buff for. So overall, I would say that this is a fairly big nerf just in terms of niche effectiveness. Which is the
This
only
is
reason you bought this is for like the big small window burst that this is really good
exactly.
in, and this is exactly what this like walks back basically.
This is huge. Like, this basically guaranteed a second and a half plus of uptime if you were a mage, particularly one that was behind against people that could burst you. Um, the only way that people could basically take you on once you had this item, and this was a very fair way to do it essentially, is that they would have to poke you once, wait a second and a half, and then go all in on you. And that was like a really interesting kind of handshake that people would have to play around. And you were obviously giving up, extra damage, which is usually what a mage item would have for a mythic. And you were giving up, you're giving up essentially stats outside of your 1.5 second window. So this is granted, you have 2.5 seconds now. The Akali is probably not going to E you and then wait 2.5 seconds before she goes in. But if you're behind, which is usually where you were going to buy Crown of the Shattered Queen in the first place, if you're behind, then a champion who can burst you who's ahead is probably going to be able to just burst you or at least knock you out of lane through the 40% damage reduction. You're taking more than twice as much damage during that window as you would have before this nerf. To me, this makes Crown of the Shattered Queen almost unusable.
Yeah, I
There are
actually had never bought this item before, but I would have definitely preferred the pre-nerfed version of this. Probably, I gotta be honest, Viker's like the only person I see like build this.
I would buy it on any type of classic mage or supportive mage mid. Because the supportive mages don't need the extra damage anyway. If I were against 2 or more champs that were bursty, so I'm talking Aurelia, I'm talking Zed, I'm talking Talon, I'm talking Kiana, I'm talking Blitzcrank. Obviously, it's not going to be mid, but if there's a Blitzcrank on the enemy team, all types of champs like that. Even against Veigar, it was a pretty good item.
Why would you want it against Blitzcrank?
Because Blitzcrank pulls you in, and his whole team is going to wail on you for the couple of seconds as your team is trying to get there and support you. With Crown of the Shattered Queen, you actually survive that.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Like, I thought it was a great item in situations like that. And now at 40%, like, this isn't going to help you win or even win a fight or even win a trade. It might stop you from dying where you would have died otherwise, but you're going to be pushed out of lane. You're going to be pushed out of the fight. You're not coming back to it. This is really sad. The extra 15 ability power means nothing, particularly given that they got rid of the bonus ability power once your crown is shattered.
What if they increased the ability power by like 40? What would you say then?
If they said ability power increased to 110,
Yeah.
then just by being like a stat stick of ability power, it becomes not bad, but it really would be, you'd be looking at it in a closer lens to the other mage mythics that already are doing extra damage, which is the same thing that ability power increase is usually doing. For a champ like Karma mid, I would say increasing the ability power by a lot, and not removing the poise, which is a big increase of ability power. would make this a good item for someone like a mid Karma, maybe a mid Lulu. Um, but without that, yeah,
I
no.
feel like even the more
Uh,
supporty people just want more damage. Nothing's
well,
gonna. Luden's just casts too wide a shadow, is the problem with all these mid lane mythics.
yes, in a way, and then like obviously like Luden's Night Harvester, and to some extent, Leandries all kind of do the same thing. So yeah, I agree. There's a weird shadow to try to step out of there. Bottom line, unless you see the perfect opportunity for it in a game where you're always the first target of the enemy team, and you can use these stats, I don't see too many places that happens. Don't buy Shattered Queen. Just buy
Yeah,
something that gives you more damage instead.
yeah.
Yeah,
If you're
when it was
looking for that
75%.
gameplay, you'll probably just get Hourglass if you want that kind of insurance.
Oh, of course, of course. Usually, if you're buying Shattered Queen, you're also buying Hourglass that same game.
Okie dokie.
Now, don't even buy Shattered Queen. Just buy the Hourglass. Yep. Okay, next.
Alright, Spear of Sojin gains 5 attack. Oh no, it
Loses five.
loses
Loses
5
five.
attack, which
Hmm.
I guess kind of factors into the buffs it got last patch where it gained more like starting ability haste, but the ratio got nerfed. So, in a way, this kind of factors into that and not in a good way, even if it's
Uh,
minuscule.
yeah, it is really minuscule. This is 0.4 ability haste that you're losing as a melee, and even less as a ranged.
Can't afford it.
0.4 ability haste. Equal to, depending on where you are in the game, about 0.02% cooldown reduction.
If I had that on
You know,
Shen, that's probably like 3 seconds.
it's a stat value of about 15 gold, if that.
Next up, we
Uh,
got the good
yeah.
old Static Shiv.
Mhm.
This is getting more AD, and then it's becoming a worse wave clear tool. Boo hoo. Much worse, actually.
Yes, and a better fighting tool. And it's like, if you're trying to turn it into that, why do you even have it in the game? I don't get this one. Do you want it? I understand that it's a hard balance to achieve, but do you want this item to be a wave clear item, or do you want it to be just a standard, scaling crit item, for your goofball builds?
They just need to give it an AD ratio, and boom, it's fixed.
That's actually not a bad idea. Like, make most of the wave clear based on your AD rather than a base value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't dislike that at all. Riot, listen to Chrissy. This man
Next
knows
up,
what he's talking about.
we got Storm Razor. Always been a bit of a niche item.
Hmm.
This is getting a nice little buff. When it first got the old rework Rooney, I think it was in its strongest place it ever had been with how big the base amount on that its passive ability was. That got pulled back on some. It's still pretty good, I think. It's just, I don't know, feels like you got to scratch your head at least once to put it in your build, just because it's kind of an awkward item. But
Yeah,
now it's
I mean,
better.
the more AD they give it, the closer it gets to being like a good choice for certain champs. This is a fine buff.
All right, and that'll do it for patch 13.8. Now we'll talk about the new champion.
There's just one thing that I wanted to mention real quickly. That the Rift Herald leash range has changed a little bit based on the bug fix. I don't know if this is always or sometimes, but just be aware.
Awesome.
All
All
right, now
right,
yeah, sorry.
on to the fun part, talking about a new champion. And here we are with Briar. This is actually looks pretty cool. I gotta say, this looks like one of the funner ones I've seen in a long time. This is some kind of emo vampire chick, presumably. I haven't seen it in game, but based on this model that looks kind of awkward.
Yeah,
Uh,
the model could be improved.
my first thought was they just started with Warwick's kit and then just modded the hell out of Warwick's kit because I feel like she plays a lot
Definitely.
like she
I had
feels
that
like
same
her
exact
functions
thought,
a
yeah.
lot like Warwick, and that's not a bad thing. Unfortunately, I think she actually has a lot more bells and whistles than Warwick. And I saw one of the first things I noticed was it saw like her type was like assassin or something, and I'm like, that's
Hmm.
not actually the indication I got. I actually thought that this kit was more in line with like a bruiser kind of complemented that style, and much less than some like all any kind of Nefiri play style, I guess.
It is, and that's the weird thing about it. It's almost like some weird combination of like Rek'Sai and Warwick. Um, sorry, not Rek'Sai. Bel'Veth. Look, all the void creatures are the same to me. Um, but yeah, it's like a weird combination of Bel'Veth with like the glass cannon, a little bit of like ability to like reduce damage or trick people into thinking it's a good fight, plus the kind of the unmitigated chase down and life stealing of Warwick. It's a weird combination, and I'll certainly talk about it more as we go. But in my opinion, parts of it did not hit.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting abilities, I guess you could say. Maybe some of them you think felt more out of place than me.
Also, she's not emo. She's kind of like Insano. Like she's just like loses touch with her sanity and goes into the berserk mode.
Okay, you're the
And then
expert.
he's yeah, and then sees somebody who she thinks is a friend and is tries to be perfectly nice, if not really weird. Uh,
Sounds like someone read the lore.
I just watched one game with her and watched the drop video, which was pretty cool.
Spotlight?
Yeah, not the spotlight, no, the cinematic where she broke out of jail.
Oh, I didn't even know there was such a thing. I try to ignore all that riot stuff. Okay, first up we got is her passive. One of the neat things that jumped out at me was the fact that she has no base health regeneration, which is definitely a liability in the laning phase because for years we've
There's no
probably
lane
taken.
phase, there's jungler.
Okay, well, I feel like even if she only jungles, I feel like her kit wouldn't be too counter to going top or whatever with like the sustain that she has, and she can heal off minions.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, so she has no health regen, but she gets more healing the lower she is, which is really cool. And then she basically has Darius's passive also, which is also pretty strong, especially in the early game. And she heals herself based on Darius's passive. So, pretty cool. I actually really like her passive. It's pretty simple, but it also seems pretty strong too.
Okay. Well, I disagree entirely. I think this is actually the biggest miss in her kit. I love the idea of a champion that essentially is losing health over time, which technically she does with no health regen plus skill costs. The way it actually works in gameplay is that she's never at any type of risk of being at low health. She stays basically perfectly full in the jungle. She heals way more against every single camp than she loses. Then she spends, then she takes damage. Um, the fact that she has 0 health regen instead of like 3 health regen per 5 seconds or whatever is completely inconsequential. She still gets the benefits, I think, from the jungle item that heal her. Um, she heals so much just from the small monsters. This is completely irrelevant. And I think it would have been great if they could have really made that kind of risk reward of having to go low and then, try and get health back a part of her identity. They did not.
So
This is
you like it?
completely inexploitable.
It's completely what?
It's completely unexploitable, like by your opponents. The fact that she doesn't have health regen doesn't mean that you can exploit it as an opponent, and doesn't mean that you have to work hard to compensate for it as the Briar, sorry.
Well,
Yeah, the complete miss on this, I say.
I definitely wasn't that negative about the passive. I liked it.
I like the idea of it. They just, like, the rest of the kit basically makes it irrelevant.
I might agree with you if she was never ever played in the lane, but I think there's definitely top lane implications to her.
Possibly, possibly, but even then, she just has so many ways to heal that I don't think that the fact that she doesn't have health regen matters.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say if you've always had it and then you suddenly have a champion that never has it.
Soraka essentially has no health regen either. I mean, if you want to get technical.
Yep, that is true. Now, if she has no base health regeneration, does that mean she gets no effect from, like, Doran Shield, since that's flat?
Um,
So, obviously, she doesn't get anything
don't
from
know.
rejuvenation beads, because those increase her
Right,
base health
those are
regen.
percentage of your base, correct. I believe something like Dorn Shield still gives her the regeneration though.
That's what I would figure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to compensate for it. She can use potions. Um, it's just if they had made this a much more extreme thing, it could have actually been a very interesting part for Kit. It's not, and therefore, like essentially, it should be ignored. It's just like
Alright,
free health on the blade. Yeah, I don't like it.
I like it. I think it's kind of similar to Warwick's passive, but a little more interesting. And I like his passive too, even though it's pretty simple.
Warwick's passive is pretty cool. That's the one that gives you up to like a 400% lifesteal when you get really low, right?
It doesn't give lifesteal, you just heal based on the magic damage you do.
Okay, okay, lifesteal-ish, lifesteal adjacent. Because almost all of his damage is magic damage,
Yeah.
so it's lifesteal adjacent.
Well, lifesteal is calculated based on the damage you do to enemies.
Of course, of course.
Okay, next up, we got her first dash, and this is kind of a really short one. And she just jumps on you, stuns you, and takes away some of your armor for quite a while. 5 seconds in this day and age is a long time for an armor debuff. Scaling's pretty good, the base numbers are pretty good, and it resets her auto attack timer. Not much to really say about this one, except it's a really short dash. But whatever.
Yeah, kind of cool, right? Like, just having like this, this like frenzied girl just like leap at you and gouge you out of nowhere. Kind of a cool
Yeah,
concept.
first time I read these,
Um,
I kind of thought that how she looks thematically didn't really match the way her crazy abilities are.
Yeah, this is not a real long leap, but combined with the ridiculous amount of speed she gets from Blood Frenzy, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's useful. And then, of
Yeah,
course, just the fact that she can stun means that even if Briar gets behind, which can be a very punishing thing, since she is a stat checky type of champion. Just the fact that you have the stun and the armor reduction, which will work for your allies too, will mean that she's not completely useless from behind.
you could also take like Black Cleaver because that helps your allies too.
Sure, you could do that.
Also, this champion doesn't use mana. This ability costs 6% of her current life.
Right, which means nothing because of what we've already discussed.
Mm. Okay, next up, this ability's got a lot going on. This is another dash, except this is kind of confusing actually. She does a dash and then gains like a big steroid where she gains bonus movement speed and attack speed. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but since Renata is the only other person that has this status effect, she basically turns into what Renata makes other people, right? It's the same status effect. Because it says Berserk, and only Renata has that status effect on her ultimate.
Yes, that is correct.
And so,
You cannot control who she's attacking, and you actually can't control her movement either.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but as we read, there's like things that like break her berserk, and the way Renata's worked, you're essentially also silenced during Renata's effect too. But she's allowed to basically take some actions and break her own berserk status through some of her abilities or something.
Yeah. So like the trade-off essentially, right, that they want to make. And this is one of the parts of the kit that I think did hit to some extent and maybe could have even been better. The trade-off is that you lose control of your champion and who they're targeting essentially. You can slightly modify who they're targeting with skills, but it's hard to do. You can't just run away until you actually use something to break the berserk. At the same time, you get a lot of speed and a lot of damage, and it's very hard to run away from you. They have to actually kind of outplay, the AI's, attempts to hunt them down. With CC, or with leading the AI version of Briar, essentially, to the target's teammates where they can all blast her at once. Or by getting over a wall or something like that. If Briar has already used her Q, um, that can be a way to escape her too.
Yeah, that's definitely probably a really core ability in her kit is going willy nilly with all the steroids when she jumps towards somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half of her W, and the thing is this just automatically when she goes in berserk, she's automatically given this attack speed or her empowered next auto attack? I feel like the wording on some of this was kind of really confusing. Well, she's berserk, and if we tie that to the Renata status effect, that should mean that you can't cast spells. But at the same time, she can also do stuff while she's berserk. So it was kind of confusing. I'm only holding this to like the prince or the precedent they've set with Renata. So
Yeah, it's while it looks a little bit like Renata plus the ghosting and whatever, it doesn't really play the same way as that, and I would try not to think of it too much in that paradigm. Um, through watching an entire round of gameplay, before I looked at the specifics of the abilities, I actually did not even notice snack attack existing. So I think what probably happens is that as soon as you use Blood Frenzy, um, you know, uh, Blood Frenzy turns into Snack Attack on your skill bar, and then you can use that at any time within 5 seconds. It's almost kind of like a first cast, second cast that do completely different things.
alright, so I assume what the intention is you just hold on to snack attack until she's attacking something that you want to take the bite out of or whatever that's more useful.
Yes, but I believe that she actually like targets a single champion and keeps trying to chase them down. I don't think that she really switches targets very much.
Yeah.
So you basically just use it when you want to get a big heal. Is probably the best way to think of it. And then you
Yeah.
use it near the end of the 5 second window if you don't need it for the heal.
And the thing is, this snack attack actually functions surprisingly similar to Warwick's Q, another throwback to like Warwick's kit, where it does like damage based on the greater amount to uh, the target's health or whatever.
Yeah, what I really want to point out about this ability, um, is that the amount of movement speed you get is pretty ridiculous. Um, it is so hard to run away from a Briar that is chasing you. And I'm sure that while you're playing Briar, uh, you don't want to use your abilities yet because you're just kind of in the run them down mode. It is probably very satisfying to actually just watch her catch up to an enemy champ so quickly, and then you use your skill to actually jump on them and deal the damage and savage them. Probably not that fun to have her chasing you. Um, in the game that I watched, it was basically impossible for people to get away from her. when she was on them, or when she was even like close to them, chasing them down. There were a few times they managed to like get back to a turret, and she couldn't stop herself. It was kind of funny. The turret would just hit her to death. But I assume that this is probably the skill you would max first because of the bonus movement speed, 60%, as well as the bonus attack speed, 120% at max rank.
Yeah, see, this is one of the reasons why I thought she had top lane implications, because this actually just heals even more off of minions than it would off champions. And her passive also allows her to heal off of minions too. And it even has a built-in caveat where if they die under the bleed, she just heals for the remaining bleed damage. That's why I thought she definitely had like top lane implications.
Sustain lane would be good, but
That's good
the
enough.
fact that the fact that it's so hard to get out of fights. Not to mention the fact that it would be hard to actually use her E. I know we're skipping ahead a little bit. For the wall stun. In top lane.
But you still got the Q. I mean, that's basically
Yeah,
the same range as Shen's dash, and Shen's
you have the
good
Q,
enough.
but you just blow up so quickly, and you can't really opt out of fights once you even opt into a trade or
There's a lot of champions top that have to commit to fights like that.
not the way she does. It's not like it's just it's not like it's just like the skills require going all in to win the trade. It's that it's that like once you use the W, you can't get out.
Well,
You're never gonna get out.
that's not true because let's just move on to her E. The big thing about her E is it allows her to instantly break the berserk status
Not
effect.
instantly. Not instantly. It takes a little while to charge it up. And even if you hit it a second time before it's fully charged up, there's like a small window that you're losing from that.
Well, the charge up only increases the effect of the chilling scream. I don't
Mhm.
think it matters.
I guess what I'm saying
towards
is you
breaking
can't
it.
recast it truly immediately. You're losing like an extra like half second before you can even break the berserk.
No, I mean, I think like just like Scions like you can basically just do a really weak version of it where you just cast it right away. If I'm just reading this like normal.
Yeah, but
see
it's
if
not
we
like
look.
it's not like a poppy ult where you can like insta cast it.
Well, if mouse over where it says like based on charge time, that means you could easily release it at like really early. If you could
You
only
can
release it after 0.5 seconds, it wouldn't start at like 0.1, you know.
Maybe it's 0.25 seconds. I don't know, but it's not instant or almost instant.
It's definitely almost instant.
I watched gameplay, dude.
Whatever. That's just based on what I'm reading.
Okay, so I don't know. That was all I had to say about the W. Did you want to continue with the E?
Yep. We got this E is actually pretty crazy too. She does have kind of an awkward kit, and I don't think it goes together super well, but I like it a lot better than Renata, which is another kit I thought was garbage that didn't go
So it's your
together very
favorite
well.
Berserk champion.
Yeah, there you go. So this is just so silly. This ability actually has a lot of things that don't really feel like they go together, but it's kind of strange. So she gets damage reduction on a channeled effect, and then heals for a percentage of her max health, and it's not a little bit; it's a lot. And it's also a damaging ability at the same time, and it's also like a crowd control ability too. I don't know. It's kind of there's a lot of crazy shit in this thing.
The crowd control is very hard to hit with this.
Yeah, I'm trying to like visualize how this would like function in my mind, and it's like seems kind of odd. I don't know.
As far as the dynamics of actually throwing people back, maybe think of it as like a Syndra E, not where you actually like knock the sphere into them, but where you just like knock them backwards. It's not particularly far. 575 units. I mean, that's not bad. Um, and I think that the thing that you missed as being very ridiculous is this has a if you actually hit them into the wall on a max charge, It has a 340% bonus AD and a 340% AP ratio.
Yeah, I actually think the base numbers are probably the most problematic. That's a lot of free
These
damage.
numbers are very high too, yeah. It's very hard to hit the wall stun unless you are basically ulting in to follow up on a teammate's CC.
I mean, the second rank
Um,
is the same as like Ezreal's ultimate, basically.
yeah, and continues to scale a lot through the ranks. The fifth rank is twice that.
Yeah, it's pretty silly.
Makes her jungle clear very reliable because obviously you can very reliably hit jungle creeps into walls. So that's what makes her like a very good jungler, I think.
This
Is
is
the
a
fact that she can clear so quickly and heal ridiculous amounts while she's doing so.
See,
The
this
thing I
is. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
okay,
This
go
is
on.
another reason why I thought she'd be good top, because she doesn't even have to interact with her enemy to get this heal. Every 16 seconds, she'll just channel it and get like 10 to 16% of her max
Yeah,
health.
this heal without even damaging an enemy is actually, I think, one of my biggest problems with this kit. And it is one of the things that makes her her so-called lack of health regeneration completely and utterly meaningless.
Well, here's the thing. I do think health regen is something that we take for granted, and every champion, like except from like you mentioned, Soraka and Aatrox are the only ones that have a very clearly pathetic health regen for obvious
Right.
reasons. But every other champion like gains a pretty generous amount of that as they level, and then by the time you're like at
Uh-huh.
18, you have somewhere between like 15 and like 45 health regen per 5
For five
seconds, and
seconds.
that is
Uh-huh.
a lot of like sustain and damage mitigation that no one really pays attention to because everyone else has it.
And
So
by all means, compare that to being able to gain 10% of your maximum health for free every 12, 13 seconds. Health regen just on this pales in comparison to that.
yeah,
That is,
this is why I think she'd be good top, because there's a few things that can make a top laner viable.
mhm.
You mentioned that she's like too committee or whatever, and I'm like that's definitely a negative that she like can't she has to commit too hard. But one thing that makes you good top is if you have insanely obnoxious sustain, and basically what that translates to is you can't be pushed out of lane. That's why like Vladimir can like flex top when he wants to, or Swain can flex top when he wants to,
Right,
or a few other
right.
champions. You don't have to be good at some of the other things if you're stupid good at like one thing like obnoxious sustain. Because just not being able to be pushed out of lane is good enough to go top lane,
The
especially if
theory's
you have some
there,
kind
but
of bruiser-esque kit.
I believe she's too easy to just kill for most top laners.
Well, it's going to depend on what she builds, and her base damage are so preposterous. I think she could easily.
She builds bonus AD. She
Yeah.
doesn't build anything else.
Okay.
Maybe crit, just because you can get such attack speed, but I don't even think you do that.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of like off-tank items that still give AD that could make
Uh-huh.
her tanky still, and she doesn't. I
Mhm.
don't think she's going to have to build like Glass Cannon. That's just going to. I mean, there's always going to be people that want to play like, all of the off tanks with full AD items, like your Canes of the world, your Fioras of the world, your off tank, your Zins, people that want to, or your Jarvans, people that want to choose to build full AD on champions that can flex into like an off tank type of playstyle. I
So
think.
who do you see her doing well against in the top lane? Like what types of champions?
Well, I think her early game could be very cheesy because I've played
Mm.
against enough Darius to know how powerful that dot is in the early game, and it stacks pretty well. And it's not honestly much less powerful than Darius's damage over time effect. So that's some pretty good early game trades. Uh, I feel like I'm not 100% sure. I think she'd probably do pretty well against any of the tanks because a weakness of tanks is
Thanks for who I was thinking might be viable against.
they tend to not have as much sustain early on or no sustain at all.
Right.
And but I think there's plenty of bruisers that she'd probably
And
do okay against.
I think the bruisers just kill her early on.
And if she's against someone ranged, then she might do okay just by nature of having a ton of sustain. Like if she's playing against Quinn, which is one of like the penultimate like troll things to go up against top or Teemo, then
Mhm.
even if they have the range, she has so much movement speed that it might not matter. You know? I think there's a lot of implications for her having like 3 different abilities that have sustain. I mean, there's a lot of champions that have obnoxious sustain top that have like one button that heals.
Is there any chance she might be good as an ADC?
You mean bot lane?
Yes.
Uh,
Bot lane alongside like a real support.
Probably if it was like one of the lower ranged AD carries, like maybe.
Uh-huh.
I tend to think a lot of the troll stuff works good against Ezreal because he doesn't snowball like a standard hyper carry. Or, yeah.
I mean, if you have something like a Nautilus or something like that, they can grab and immobilize someone, and then you just, dash there, charge up, and knock them into the wall.
Problem with a lot of the troll stuff is it tends to be worse against like a double poke comp bot, or it tends to be hard for the main carry to farm.
And you say double poke, but all this is sustain.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh-huh.
But an AD carry is going to have more serious poke than like a top laner that happens to be ranged.
Yeah, that's also
and
true.
If the support's also ranged, it could like really complicate things because it's probably not going to matter how much sustain she has if she has to deal with like Bran chucking shit at her every 5 seconds.
I guess. Yeah, it's like if I squint, I could see the theory there.
I don't see bot happening, but I think top is definitely a real deal though.
I don't know about that.
Mid lane, she might do pretty good against the mid lane assassins early on too.
Oh no way! Yeah,
I don't think there's no way that
a Talon will just stab her and throw her in the dumpster at level 2.
Dude, if anything, no, I actually think she'd be good against like Talon or Zed or Yasuo in the early game before they start getting like a lot of their like penetration or their like crit builds going, like Yasuo or Yone or whatever. I think her like cheesiness will probably be pretty potent early on. Any champion that has a lot of attack speed early on can definitely be cheesy in any matchup. And that's something that assassins are really weak early on. And
there's no way she's ever going to want to be mid lane anyway, because her whole strength is being able to run people down over medium to long distances. You can't do that mid lane.
That's true. But that doesn't mean she'd be weak against those champions.
I do think that someone like a Talon would just kill her repeatedly in lane.
Well, another reason why she'd be good is when you know the burst component is going, you can just start channeling your E, which negates like part of Zed's ultimate or Talon's combo. I feel like there's a lot of potential for this kit to be kind of cheesy versus a lot of champions.
Also worth mentioning is that the fact that using your E takes you out of your own berserk is essentially the only like one opt-out that you get. There are a couple other ways that she unberserks, but they rely on the opponents doing certain things, or they require, I think, using her ult maybe.
Yeah, I feel like if her E didn't do that, I feel like she'd be in a much worse place, but the fact that it does kind of opens up a universe of options, I think. Okay, ready to move on to the ultimate?
Yep.
Alright, I had to actually do like a double and triple take on this because I didn't realize this was actually a global.
Semi-global.
The first few times that I read it. So, this is kind of functions similar to like Urgot's, the first part of Urgot's kit, right? It's like some kind of thing she throws
I would say it's
there.
a much more similar function to Vex's ultimate. Except you can't choose not to use it.
Yeah, same thing. That's kind of what I meant. The Vex is probably a better comparison. So, yeah, there's really not much to say about this ultimate. She just takes it, grabs you, goes in, she gets all the effects of her W, and then gets even more effects of her W, more lifesteal, even more movement speed. And if that wasn't crazy enough, the scaling on this ability is pretty good too. And yeah, then she also, and this is even more of a reason that she can go top, she gets bonus armor and bonus magic resistance based on her like AD. That's pretty cool.
Yep. So she can actually survive, for a short time in a 1v3 or something like that if she's fed and she goes in.
And if that wasn't crazy
Uh,
enough, she just permanently gains the stats until her primary target dies. That's pretty crazy too, I think. Pretty sure I read that correct. She just keeps getting all of the steroids until the target of the thing she attached to like dies.
I'm looking to see the length of that because I'm actually not sure. Metalomania. Yeah, I don't think that's timed. So it's if the target dies or if the target like gets out of her range where she can't really attack them anymore. Or she can't even chase them anymore. Same as the W. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's pretty fun to watch her go in on this. She can make huge plays even from behind using this. At the same time, she can also give away a shutdown very easily by throwing out her ult and then realizing, oh crap, they have 3 allies there. Or, oh crap, that's gonna hit somebody who's behind a turret. It's gonna miss my original target and hit somebody who's behind like their second tier turret. Whoops. It's kind of funny. I do like this ability.
Yeah.
Yeah, just think about a Vex ult that gives you like huge stats when you go in, but you also can't say no to taking the second cast.
Cool. Yeah, I think she just this is kind of a lot why Trundle like beats almost everyone in the game at like level 6. She just has so many built-in steroids in her kit. It's pretty crazy.
One interesting like edge for this is if you're about to get CC'd, you can throw this out, and as soon as it hits someone, it'll cleanse your CC, and you'll dash over to them.
Yep, it also fears everyone.
Yep. Well, that's that goes without saying, right? It's like a Vex ult.
Well, it's actually Vex's passive that does that.
I know, but like when Vex goes in, she's always going to do that.
Pretty cool, though.
Yeah, so this is a cool ability. Yeah, when you're behind, when you're ahead as Briar, like, and you go in on people, like, it is so hard to stop you, and it requires like a few of their allies to be there
Yeah,
to peel the person.
it's kind of like Olaf, but even sillier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a little silly. This is very much like you were criticizing my Tryndamere for the other day. This is completely like feast or famine, depending on how well you do in the early game. You can still throw if you do well later on. You can still, find good fights as long as you're not too far behind. But in general, very feast or famine champion. Again, no pun intended with Briar. And yeah, the main issue that I have, I think, with the kit, besides the fact that they really missed on the the needs to feed to to stay alive type of thing, where it's just so easy to do, is that I don't know that I love that the part that they took out of your control is movement as well as like auto attacking. I think it would be interesting if maybe she would decide based on some type of like easy to understand priority list when and who she's going to use the abilities on. And maybe you had control of the movement, so you had to control and steer this very like unpredictable type of champion. I do think that would be probably pretty hard to implement and balance, but I think it might be an even cooler version of this idea of you have periods of control and periods of no control, which is what they were going for with Briar. The AD ratios on some of these skills are insane. Obviously, The fact that you can't control who she's attacking with your auto attack AD is some compensation for that.
Yeah. I think another reason where I think it would fit her
Mm-hmm.
to build more tanky is that, yeah, like you said, she has such insane like base numbers on her abilities that her scaling is really good, but all of her these base numbers are really good too. She just has a lot of
That,
built-in strength before like math even comes in, you know.
that is true. The base numbers are very high on her ultimate as well as her full damage E.
Not just
But
that. I mean,
I can't emphasize how hard the full damage E is to actually achieve unless you have allies that have like really set up CC for you with like chain binds and things like that, or unless you're in the jungle and you're just using it on jungle creeps. And in addition to that, most of her damage is not actually coming out from her abilities. The abilities are more like how you steer her and get her over walls and things like that. Most of the damage is coming out from the autos after you catch up to somebody with your W. And so that's why I do think she really does want to build the AD despite her high base numbers.
well, she could
Because
always take like lethal tempo, and I feel like Bork is like enough on so many champions.
you're gonna
Yeah.
go like an on hit tanky? That's
No,
interesting.
no. If you just have like Bork and lethal tempo, you could just
Mm,
build like tank straight up after that, and a lot of champions are still perfectly viable with just Bork. Because Bork is such an insanely powerful item on melee champions that with lethal tempo, you don't really need any other offensive stuff.
yeah, you make a strong argument for it, but from all the discussion and from the gameplay that I've seen, it doesn't seem like that's what people see her doing.
Hell, even her Q would increase
May-
the passive
Maybe
effect of
you
Bork.
maybe you found something that kind of went under the radar. I don't know.
Another big
Um,
thing is if you look at the heal on her W, that doesn't
yeah,
even scale with levels. She just gets that flat chunk regardless of rank. That's another like point top lane. She just gets that no matter if with 1 point in the thing. You said she'd max that first, but still, that's pretty crazy.
but that's a heal percentage. So
Yeah, I know.
the higher your AD, the higher your heal. I think
And
the AD essentially gives you too many things. The healing, obviously, the bonus resistances with your ult. I think it just gives you too many things to go for anything that doesn't give you bonus AD. I could be wrong. I could see maybe like a Guardian Angel working well on her.
I just don't think she needs to be super AD heavy to still be an asset. Because, a good frontliner is just as much an asset as, someone that's going to go in there and kill everybody.
Yeah, but if you're going for a frontliner, there's a lot of people that do their job better than Briar.
Well, the thing is, a lot of these abilities will scale off of a larger health pool. Like, her E is a max health heal. That's obviously going to be more potent if she has more health. And just like Volibear, and Warwick, the fact that she heals for percentage or missing health is obviously going to be much more potent with more health. Not to mention, her passive increases both of those based on her missing health. And that's not even to throw in shit like Spirit Visage, Revitalize. There's a lot of room for crazy tank shenanigans in this kit.
All right. Well, when is this? When do we have the release date that she's dropping?
Probably yesterday.
It was yesterday. Okay, I haven't played
And
for 2 days.
one extra caveat is she's already received a hot fix yesterday, but it was
Uh-huh.
actually just a buff. She got 20 more HP at level 1, and then they increased the damage reduction on her Scream thing by 5%
Oh,
and reduced the cooldown. So what we were reading were the adjusted figures, but that was what she
mhm.
got yesterday.
Okay. So I'll tell you what. After the Dolphins kick the Patriots' ass on Sunday night, let's hop into a game. You play top lane Briar, off tanky or whatever. I'll play whoever you want me to. That would synergize well with her, and we'll see how it works.
I've never even played her before.
I mean, that's what the practice
But
tool is for.
I
You
would be
got
down
two
to
days
play her,
till
though.
Sunday night, Chrissy.
Okie dokie.
All right. So I know that you like to give these champs and reworks a rating when you see them the first time. Tell me
Yeah,
what you think about her overall if you haven't said your piece already. And yeah, what do you rate her?
I think this is definitely one of the better ones that's come out lately. This is head and shoulders above like the likes of Milo and Renata. That's for damn
Oh.
sure. I would say I would give this like a 7 out of 10. It definitely
Hmm.
doesn't come close to the 9 or 10 out of 10 I gave Aurelion Sol's rework. That was, I think, S plus tier, one of the best jobs they ever did. But I think this is definitely some parts of the kit. I think you're right; they do feel a bit odd and out of place. But when you just look at how unbelievably generous the base numbers are, and the fact that she has like 3 different heals in her kit and stuff like that, and all of the double dashes, it's just like I don't know. It just screams top lane abuse to me.
Hmm.
And
You think too much potential for abuse or cheese?
I think just because of passive, I think it'll be very cheesy early on because a lot of that is why Darius is cheesy early on because he has such a strong dot that allows him to win trades effortlessly in the early game. But later in the game, I think it'd be really difficult for like squishy champions to deal with her if she had like a number of tank items and still was running like Bork or some other like one-off damage item. Because I feel like she'd only need like one damage item to compensate or to combo with lethal tempo and her W because of just the raw amount of steroids that are in her kit. You know.
I hear what you're saying. I think you're making a strong argument. I still don't think that's how it's going to work in practice, but what you're saying is logical. Here's what I think about Briar. I think that it was a great idea to come up with this champ, not only thematically but also gameplay wise, which offers periods of control and periods of being completely out of control, periods of just pure recklessness. I think that's a very fun idea, and I think that they had a mountain to climb to actually be able to implement that in a fun and balanced way. I don't think they completely hit with it. I think that the ways that you get control and the ways that you lose control um, don't offer enough interesting decisions. It's more of just a small skill execution type of thing. Or at least not enough decisions once you're actually out of control, right? Obviously, there's always the decision of is now a good time to go in and chase someone with my W. I think they completely missed on the idea of like as they had controversially said, a bag of blood, right? That is constantly like running out and needs to attack things to survive. Way too easy to heal her. You can basically ignore the fact that she doesn't have health regen and that she has percent health cost on her abilities. Just ignore them completely. Um, Parts of the kit, particularly the E, feel a little bit out of place or disjointed, even though they are cool skills. She does look like she would actually be pretty fun to try and outplay when she's in her W by by putting up terrain, by baiting her behind a turret, by actually walking into her ult when she meant to attack someone else, by hiding or by making herself visible where other teammates are hiding, and once she goes in, she doesn't really have a way out.
Well,
I think there are fun ways to outplay her, and I think that the rush in terms of actually moving in and just catching up so quickly with another champ as they try to run away can be fun. But I think this will be a problematic champ to balance. I think they could have done a better job than they did do, and I will give it a 5 out of 10.
I don't think she'll be too crazy because unlike Olaf, she can still be like CC during her crazy points and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and she can still be slowed and stuff and all that. Just it's unlike Master Yi, so I don't think she'll be as annoying as some of the stupider uh, chase you because I can buttons in the game.
Yeah, I don't think that the annoyance factor is the big issue with her. It's
Well,
just the kind of the feast or famine stat checkiness, and the fact that you're losing control in weird ways.
I like it.
Okay.
Alright, well, that does it for Briar and 13.8. Just a reminder, we'll be doing Kog'Maw October 1st, hopefully. So that's something to look forward to.
All right. Probably around the same time that patch 19 is going to hit, right?
Probably.
So see you with a load of content then.
Yup.
All right.
Alright, welcome to part 3. Have some internet problems or Discord's freaking out. It's probably my fault since my internet's been really ghetto the last few months. Next up, we got Silas, who's getting more mana. I actually do think he's pretty mana hungry early on. I don't think it's his problem in the late game, though.
Yeah, agreed. He actually does run out of mana in a lot of the early trades early on. It's the only way that he can really fight, and this will let him basically use one more skill every time he comes back from Biss.
Yep.
He'll have one more skill before he runs Zoom. It's a small buff, but it's a nice buff for him.
Yeah, not a lot to say about that. Next up, we got some stat buffs to Tristana. Let's see, we got less health, more armor per level, and
less magic resist.
MR. Yeah, I don't really know what to think about that.
Basically, they went nowhere with this. This is like some corporate executive basically hiring a bunch of accountants to make it look like the money went to one division instead of another, so that they were like profitable. But really, it didn't do anything to the business.
I'd say 3 of these changes are pretty meaningless. I think the only one of consequence is her gaining base armor, because for an AD carry, any bit of armor to mitigate the flat shred of lethality, I think, is impactful. So I think that's the only one of consequence.
Yeah, that's 4 base armor. At the beginning of the game, you're probably taking more damage from the support than you are from the ADC.
But Serrated Dirk is like 10 armor spend, basically.
Yeah, later on. But even that, means she's taking maybe like 3% less damage, but she also has 3% less health. This really feels like a nothing burger to me. The one thing I might guess, and I haven't seen it much lately, but have you seen Tristana mid, maybe? I'm thinking maybe they're trying to make her worse against mages?
That was actually a thing like 2 years ago. People were busting out like Tristana and Lucian. Just because they both are so fucking aggro and have such an all-in against the mages.
I haven't seen it recently. But I'm wondering if that could possibly be the case, because as far as ADC Tristana, in the laning phase and really through the entire game, this is nothing. This is like a zero-sum change.
It's not a buff.
Yeah, I really think this is a zero-sum change. The only thing I can guess is they're trying to make her worse against mages mid, and even then, I haven't seen her mid more than once or twice in the last year.
Alright.
That's a weird one.
I would say it's a net nerf instead of power neutral, as you like to say.
Okay. I would say it's completely power neutral myself.
Well, I think the base armor is more impactful in the laning phase, even if the armor growth eventually compensates for that. So that's the part of the game.
They're giving her more armor and more armor growth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's more impactful.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's no like compensation. The compensation is they're getting rid of the MR and they're getting rid of health.
I hear you.
Okay. So you think it's a buff? I think it's a nothing burger.
Okie dokie. Next up, we got Wukong, and they decided to make his Q cost no mana. That's okay, because it's always up anyway. And then there's like a bug on my screen. I assume this is a change to his W clone thing. The text on my screen is kind of messed up with this ability for some reason.
Warrior Trister?
Yeah.
It says mana cost is reduced to 60 to 40 from 80 to 40. So at the earlier ranks, it costs less mana. So this is just basically more mana for Weezle all around.
Yeah, nobody really plays him top anymore. He's basically just a cheese lord, full AD jungler now.
Yeah, it's mostly in the jungler, and more often than not, I actually see him succeed there.
There was a time where this champion was kind of like an off tank or a bruiser in the old days. Those
Oh
times.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
moved on to Talon levels of play, though.
Actually in Arena, I've seen him kind of go bruiser with some success as well. But yeah, as far as the Rift, he's more of a burst assassin type.
Okie dokie. That'll do it for the champion changes. Next up, some very inconsequential item changes. Hey, first up, we've got Axiom Arc,
Uh-huh.
which got a big nerf in the other patch that really limited its user base, but now they're giving the baseline effect a big, or I guess a bit of a buff.
Didn't
Now
we
that it,
decide that? Sorry, go on.
well, the rest of the portion of the ability now scales only with lethality now, where it was strong enough to be picked up as a one-off item on just about any AD champion that
Uh-huh.
wanted to abuse it. Uh, it's probably still the case that this is still kind of not worth getting on anyone that doesn't build like full lethality, though, even with this buff.
Well, I think when we looked at this change, we actually worked out the numbers, and because it gives you 18 lethality in itself, it was like you get one more lethality item, and you're breaking even, and then beyond that, you actually do better, than when it used to refund. Was it 25% of your total cooldown? Was it 30?
I don't remember, but it was good enough to be a one-off item on someone who would not build any other lethality items.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely worse as a one-off now. But what we're going to see with all of these item changes is that everything except Duskblade of Drakthar for assassins basically picked up a small buff, and then Duskblade got a nerf. So just for that, I think there's going to be a lot of assassins shifting from Duskblade, which was just so good, to Axiom Arc. And yeah, now that it's giving you a 10% cooldown plus 0.4% per lethality, which just from this one item is another 7%. This really isn't bad.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. You said switch, where Axiom Arc is not a mythic like Duskblade is. So there's no like this or
Now,
that
speaking of
decision.
Duskblade,
Well, you made it sound like both of them are mythics and you have to choose one or the other. One's a legendary and one's a mythic, so. Know what I mean? Oh, for God's sakes. Alright, here we are with part 4 of 16 or 13.16, and last thing I said is you were saying how they would have to switch from Duskblade to Axiom Arc, and before it cut out I explained that only Duskblade is a mythic and Axiom Arc is a legendary, so you don't have to switch. You can still get them
that's
both.
right. That's right. Axiom Arc's not a not a mythic. I keep thinking it is. Um,
It was Prowler's Claw that got downgraded.
yes, yes. I don't know why I was thinking that. Sorry, but yeah. So I think Axiom Arc is still looking pretty good in a lot of builds now, especially now that it's 10% lethality, plus 7% just for its baseline value with the lethality it gives you. And I said 10% lethality, I meant the cooldown reduction. Plus bonus for all the other lethality that you stack up. Like, if your champ likes being able to ultimate twice during a fight, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a cool item. I just feel like it's a little too niche. I wish there was like a version other types of champions could take.
And by the way, for everybody listening to us continually cut out and having to do this video in 4 parts, you should have listened to me at the beginning. I told you to skip this one. But thank you for listening all the way through anyway.
Alright, next up we'll talk about Duskblade now, where the like fade and targetability thing now has a 30-second cooldown instead of 10.
Yeah.
That's probably a good thing, but then the bonus damage went down a tiny bit. At one point it was like 25%, then got nerfed to 20, now it's getting hit again. Overall though, for like the jump in there and kill someone people, the fact that it just triggers at least once is the important thing.
Yeah, I think this is actually a fairly big nerf to the Duskblade, and I'll tell you why. While generally in a like a really intense bursty team fight, you're only going to be able to proc this once anyway, whether it's 30 seconds or 10 seconds. What a lot of the really good assassins do is they can proc it once in a team fight, get out of that team fight, and then as it breaks up and people are trying to back and buy their items, or as they're trying to move on to an objective, they find another target, they pick them off there, and then any of their teammates that were near them, if you've got the Duskblade proccing a second time, you can get away from them. And that was actually a nice thing that a lot of the really good assassins did. And I found them doing that in a lot of my games, and honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. Like, I totally agree that Duskblade was an overpowered item and it needed a nerf of some sort, but they nerfed the coolest part of the item. I would have really liked them to just take away some of the, just a little bit of the stats instead, and let the really good assassins do their cool assassin things.
I think it was just fine. I only thought it was broken prior to like the AD item giant overhaul when it would constantly reset. That's when I thought it was too strong.
I don't know.
I mean, that's basically as strong as Kha'Zix's ultimate.
Almost every assassin is going this as their mythic, and even a lot of people who are supposed to be fighters, people like Wukong, are taking things like this. It really was just it was crowding out a lot of the other assassin items and even some of the other AD mythics that were not designed for ADCs, obviously. So I'm glad it got nerfed, but I really wish they would have nerfed the stats rather than the coolest part of Duskblade. That's all.
Okie dokie, next up we got Prowler's Claw, and I actually like this change. It's such kind of a not a super impactful effect like it used to have, that crazy dash where you would dash through people. Those days are gone. Now this is basically just a I kind of think of it as like just an extra keystone almost, what this item does. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's
you just get bonus damage for dashing. Yeah, I feel like that's what, sudden impact, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's resetting every few seconds and has obviously a very easy condition for a lot of champions to proc. Yeah, they're just improving it a little bit, and which is kind of what they did with all these other assassin items that are not called Duskblade.
Yep.
That's all I gotta say.
And then lastly, we've got Serpent's Fang and Umbral Glaive, both gained some lethality. These are kind of the Joker utility lethality items that nobody buys anyway. The ones that you find on like Senna and Pike because they're just so poverty stricken. So now they get a little more bang for their buck, but none of the mainstream mid laners ever take these basically.
Yeah, I agree with you in general. Serpent's Fang definitely has some niche uses in certain games. For if you're going against a set that's getting like 400% of his HP as a shield, if you're going against even like a Vex or something like that, can get a pretty big shield. If you can use the Serpent's Fang against a couple champions that are putting really big shields on themselves, it pays off for itself. But I agree.
I don't really think it's good enough at what it does.
They've buffed it a few times over the years, and I think if you find the right team to use it against, it's actually a quite good item as a fifth item or so.
Yeah.
Umbral Glaive, yeah, I don't see that very often. The Blackout assassin item used to be very popular, but once it was moved to Umbral Glaive, hasn't really been seen much. But, worth pointing out, this is more lethality, and if you're using that in combination with Axiom Arc, hey, pretty good.
Yep. Well, that does it for 13.16 finally, and we better get the hell out of here.
Before we have to do a part 5. Yeah, we're out. See ya.
Alright. See you guys next time.